What's up, you guys? How y'all doing? So, Philadelphia Supercross was this past Saturday night, or this past Saturday morning for me, since it came on at 9 in the morning in Hawaii and it aired on NBC. And wow, we got two good title chases going on, while the West, in the 250 class anyway, seems like a foregone conclusion. We're going to get into my recap in a little bit, but first off, guys, just remember, subscribe. If you think that I'm worth listening to, that's good enough for me. I don't have the same kind of insight as Cooksey does, and I've already accepted that because he's got way more insight than I do any day of the week, that's for sure. But I like to throw out my own opinions on this and that, and I got quite a few to share for sure. So I'm going to start with the 250 class this time, but first of all, as I said earlier, just remember, subscribe if you think that I'm worth listening to. And in the meantime, let's get into this. Okay, now for my banner for the 250s. 2 straight for Cole Davies. Tom Vialle must win a race. Now, first off, Cole Davies, 2 wins in a row. Wow. I think this guy is legit. He's no Ernesto Fonseca, that's for sure, because Fonseca started out 1999 with 4 straight wins before losing to Brock Sellers at Pontiac. But, you know, I had a feeling that Cole Davies was going to win one sooner or later after how the West season went for him. And I think on one side of the coin, you could also say that Cole Davies is doing a hell of a lot better than Ben Townley did in his really short time in the States. Now, granted, Ben Townley did win the 250 East title in 2007, and he had to come from a mechanical in the first round to win it, and he did put together 2 wins in a row. Is Cole Davies going to win this championship? I kind of doubt it now, because he had a couple of bad races, but you also have to remember that this is Cole's rookie season. And for him to do something like this, Ben Townley did win 2 in a row early on in Supercross in 07 in the East. But for Davies to do this in the West, although it may not sound like pretty significant, 2 in a row, theoretically anyway, for a rookie to do 2 wins in a row in this day and age, that's probably just as significant as maybe winning 6 in a row in your rookie season like Chad Reed did in 02 in the 125 East. But then again, at the same time, the talent level was probably not as deep as today's talent pool is. And of course, this season in the 250s, they only take the champion out of the 250 class, give them 1 year to defend their championship, and that's it, unless, of course, you're Tom Vialle. But this is the time where I feel like the point out rule has to be tweaked, because for Vialle to win a title, I thought for sure that this was going to be Tom's last year in the 250 class. But reading between the lines, Vialle does get another year, which kind of surprises me, because I really feel like the way that the point out rule is in the lights class is not so cut and dry like it was back when I was following the sport early on. Because back then it was score 100 points in 3 straight seasons, essentially making it an entry-level class, which I think the 250 class has to go by now. Have to start going by points. And instead of just taking the champion only, have guys score over 100, 150 points in 3 seasons. It doesn't have to be consecutive. Like I said before in a prior video, it doesn't have to be consecutive, but a lot of guys are finding themselves lost and stuck in the lights class. I can remember Kelly Smith, Brock Sellers, and I think somebody else off the top of my head that was Matt Walker also. And also, to a point, Billy Laninovich, because those guys were hot, up-and-coming amateurs and certainly title contenders any given day, but bad luck just ultimately cost them. That's for sure. And as a result, a lot of those guys never pointed out. They never even won a title. They won races, but not a title. So this is where I have to say that the lights rule for pointing out has to be tweaked. But anyway, back to this one. Tom Vialle, tisk, tisk, tisk. If there's a guy to really be disappointed in and for, Tom Vialle is the guy at the top of that list. Because after Seth Hammaker got the good start over Vialle, and then the red flag came out, that was a golden opportunity for Tom Vialle to take advantage of Seth Hammaker's misfortunes, and he couldn't do it. As a result, RJ Hampshire beat the both of them, and now he's tied for the lead, in the points lead in the East with Seth Hammaker, and Tom Vialle now has to play catch-up again. And up until that 22nd at Foxborough, I thought there was a good chance that Tom Vialle could quote-unquote Tim Ferry this title. Now, that's out of the question because Vialle finished 6th. And I think Hampshire got 3rd and Hammaker got 4th. But still, for Tom Vialle, if you're KTM, you better hope, if you're Tom Vialle, and you better hope KTM doesn't read you the riot act because they ain't going to be happy, especially considering the financial situation that they're in. Of course, I have no insight on that. I can only presume that they tried to cook the books and got caught. But I don't know. But that's just my take. Okay? So anyway, for Tom Vialle, I thought he was going to Tim Ferry this title, as in win the title without winning a race. And that hasn't happened since Ferry did it in 97. Before that, the only guy who did that was Willie Surratt back in 87, I think, when he won the 125 West without a victory. So, and Ryan Morris almost pulled that off in 2007. But he ended up 2nd overall. So, Tom Vialle, I don't know. I am so disappointed in that guy and for that guy. Because up until that 22nd at Foxborough, he stood a good chance to repeat as champion, and then that means he'd have to move up anyway. But still, for someone like Tom Vialle, he's got to get on the stick and nail his starts because that seems to be where Vialle's really struggling in. I mean, look back to 2000 when Stefan Ricotta won the 125 East that year. His starts in the heat races were so freaking awful, okay? But he managed to turn it around by the main event. And if you're going to get a bad start in the heat race is theoretically the best one you probably want to do. But then again, if you're blessed with good starts like guys like Jeff Emig and Michael Essie, you got a good chance at winning a title. For someone like Vialle, I don't know. That's kind of hot and cold. One day it'll work, one day it won't. And unfortunately for Vialle, the Philadelphia race, that was the one where it did not work for him. And up until Joe Shimoda passed him, that kind of ruined Vialle's race. And that's probably going to ruin his championship hopes, unless, of course, Hammaker gets hurt and Hampshire re-injures his wrist. Although you certainly don't wish for that kind of luck, and you certainly don't wish for mechanicals to take place. But oftentimes you hear everybody says it's a motorcycle, it's a machine, it's got a mind of its own. Chad Watts said that to Ricky Carmichael before he swept, but that didn't stop him from sweeping the 2002 motocross season. So, Tom Vialle has to win a race. If Seth Hammaker wins this championship, that'll be a feel-good story, especially for Mitch Payton And they haven't had a title in the lights class or the 250 class in over 10 years. Now, fortunately, the Philly race did get spared a mud race, but I'm going to talk about that a little later. But, as far as Seth Hammaker and Pro Circuit is concerned, I hope they pull it off. And I hope Tom Vialle pulls off this title at the same time. Either one is going to be a feel-good story. But as far as Mitch Payton and Pro Circuit go, I'll tell you, I've been feeling really sorry for Mitch Payton, especially when you consider the kind of luck that his riders have gone through, especially Austin Fortner last year, where he won the first round, crashed out in round 2, and that was it for his year. Now, Levi Kitchen goes out, has a chance to win the East title, and then he goes out with a bad crash at Daytona. And now reports are that Levi's back on the bike, but he's on a 450. So something tells me that maybe, just maybe, Team Kawasaki could be looking at signing Levi Kitchen in the next couple of years or so. But for Seth Hammaker to win this championship, that will be a feel-good story, like I said, especially considering that Pro Circuit's last title was 2017. And I don't think they've been having much luck since Adam Cincerillo and Austin Fortner lost out on both the West and the East titles in 2019 at Samboy Stadium. So I'm hoping that Hammaker can pull it off, just for the sake that I feel sorry for Mitch Payton and his team. And I really want to see him do good. And it wasn't long ago that the team was the cream of the crop, that's for sure. The early 2000s, because they were winning titles left and right. But ever since the 2010s came around, it hasn't really worked out. A lot of it has just been bad luck and, this guy getting hurt, that guy having mechanicals. But you can't blame it on the riders, on their preparation, because they probably work just as hard as some of the tech guys do. So we'll see what happens once we hit the final round of Salt Lake City. So now we go to the Chase Sexton beats Cooper Webb. Sexton must win out. Now, before I get to this, I want to say, though, that I am so glad that Philadelphia did not turn out to be another goopy mud race, like how the last race in Foxborough was. And that was not Supercross. That was Mudcross or Endurocross or whatnot. So while I'm glad that Philly didn't turn out to be a mud race, something tells me somewhere down the line, whoever constructed this schedule is going to face a lot of heat from a lot of people, myself included. Like I said, they're going to face a lot of heat and criticism, I might want to add. So, first off, Chase Sexton beats Cooper Webb. With Cooper Webb having the kind of points lead that he had, you might be wondering, would he consider conceding one to Chase Sexton? And as far as I was concerned, it looked that way at first to me, because Cooper Webb, although he was trying hard, he had nothing for Chase Sexton, and I think that really pissed him off. But for Chase Sexton, if you're in the Chase Sexton camp, the only thing you can do is win out. And unlike Chad Reed in 2003, he pulled it off. He won out the final 6 events, but he didn't win the title. Who can remember that? 2003. And obviously that certainly upset the defending champ, Ricky Carmichael, at that time. And after losing the final 6 events of that season, you got to wonder where his confidence level was, or even his anger level, or even how high his anger levels were. Okay? Because I would imagine that he had to have been kind of punching walls or just or whatnot, but he openly admits that he lost a lot of sleep over Chad Reed winning out the final 6 races of 2003. Now, granted, Carmichael had a full race lead on him when Chad Reed won out the final 6 races. And he would win the title by 7 points over Reed. But at that time, if you're Chad Reed, you did everything you could. Chase Sexton can do everything he can possibly do in this final few stretches. The difference is, though, Sexton has a legitimate chance at the title, but the only thing he can do is win out. Chad Reed did that, but he couldn't win the title. Now, granted, a lot of the field back at the time in 2003, the only other competitors out there were Reed, Carmichael, Fonseca, and at that point, Ernesto Fonseca, and at that point, Tim Ferry. And a lot of the other guys that were out there were either 125 riders riding the West or the East Coast to fill in for the guys who were out. I can remember Travis Preston did that. Danny Smith did that. Then he got hurt at Houston. Sean Hamlin did that for Team Suzuki. And a lot of the other guys out there were a bunch of B-level privateers, as Racer X reported. And guys who were not really up to the same caliber as Carmichael. I mean, they could hold him off, but not for a whole race. Guys like Keith Voss, Ryan Clark, Keith Johnson, they could hold off Carmichael any given day, but not to the end of the race. Now, Sexton has to win out because if Chase Sexton were to win out the rest of the series, he would win the championship by virtue of the tiebreaker rules. He would tie Cooper Webb in the final points tally, but Sexton would get the title based on the number of wins. And this also kind of reminds me of 1997 when Jeremy McGrath was trailing Jeff Emig in the point standings, and he felt the only thing he could do was win out the rest of the season, and he would win the title. And that would have happened. But if he hadn't crashed at Pontiac and had that flat tire at Charlotte, one wonders how much Jeremy McGrath would have won that championship by in 1997. But at that time, McGrath had the 11th hour switch to Suzuki, and he wasn't satisfied with the new Hondas. So obviously that did contribute at a lot of points in the season. And of course, McGrath hurt his foot just before the Vegas finale, and he ended up finishing 7th while Emig finished in 4th. And that was the only title McGrath lost until Carmichael came along. So if Chase Sexton can rip this title out of Cooper Webb's hands, he's going to have to hope that Cooper Webb makes a mistake. But the thing is, Cooper Webb isn't really known for making a lot of big mistakes because he's kind of like a steadier version of a mix of Ricky Carmichael and Shane Stewart and Chad Reed. But the guy that was most likely to make a mistake of the three at that time was James Stewart because he was still learning the ropes for the 450 class at that time, 20 years ago. And while I don't doubt that Cooper Webb could win races, I was wondering if Yamaha would have been content with that at that time because, at this time, it's kind of like a basketball team where you got a 10-point lead and you could concede maybe a shot or two. But if you got more than if you're up by 15 or 20, you might concede a shot or if you're up double digits. But if they go on a big run, like how Chase Sexton could, that's where the urgency can really rise up if you're in the Cooper Webb camp. Okay? So while I do want to see a good battle down the stretch, something tells me that the momentum is certainly in Chase Sexton's corner. But we'll see what happens as we hit the final quarter of this season. So anyway, guys, that's all for today. And remember, subscribe, and I'll see you all for the next race.